one of the hardest journeys. It's the grind, the perseverance. When they accumulate, it's no after no after no. You have a lot of self-doubt, and how do you get through that self-doubt? My tech lead right now manages four coders. Four. Three of those are AI agents. They're robots. 80% of our coding is now automated. I mean, that's the direction. And is it scary to a certain extent? Yes, it is. Is it fascinating to a great extent as well? Yes, it is. I'm in a 50-50 game. I'm scared for, what the future of my kids will be in terms of their work and, what's the career for them. What are the three skills that they feel that we need to pay more attention to, because young adults that are coming out of school and entering the labor market are completely missing? One.
Welcome to the Future Minds podcast.
I've got a very intelligent guest on the Future Minds podcast today. So I've got Brano, who's the CEO and founder of Talent Square. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Luca.
First of all, it'd be great to understand for anyone listening as well is, where you've started your career and, how you've linked to where you've got today as well. The absolute roller coaster of yours. So if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
A roller coaster is one of the adjectives or one of the descriptors that I would definitely use. Yeah, it's a question of how much time do we have. But anyway, I'll try to make it short and sweet. I've always, ever since my university studies, I've always thought about my career as a jungle gym. And what I mean by that is, I was keen on understanding how organizations, business, but also organizations in general, not necessarily only business, work. And I was told very early in my career that, in order to understand how they work and how individual departments internally, work together or don't, and they create silo effects. In order for me to, or for one to understand how organizations work, you need to have different seats in that organization, because every seat, so to speak, or every position in a different area provides you with a different perspective and another bit of understanding on, how does that department that you're sitting in correlates or relates to others, etc. So that's what I mean by jungle gym. My career or my professional journey has been the jungle gym. I've been jumping from an experience to an experience, changing seats in organizations, sometimes by accident, sometimes by the opportunity, sometimes by a conscious choice to kind of get the understanding. And that kind of a jungle gym concept has not only been applied to my corporate part of my career that I spent 15 plus years in, but also the fact that now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a 51-year-old startup founder. That just adds on to the element of the jungle gym aspect. So my career started in academia. Actually, I loved academia on so many levels. When I was in school, and then I stayed on a little bit longer than I thought I would, because I actually went for my PhD in human resource management and organizational development. And part of that experience was I had to teach. That's part of the requirements. And I fell in love with teaching. And actually, towards the end of my PhD work, one of the dreams that I had was to have a private business school and wanted to stay in academia. And then what happened? Life happened. And what I mean by that is, I got into a serious relationship, and that relationship grew into the marriage that I have now. And of course, the relationship brought some needs for, let's just say, more monetization. And so, and academia wasn't, or at least the academia that I was in Central Europe wasn't providing that to the extent that kind of started to be needed. So I went and was hired by a global consulting firm. And I spent 5 years doing human resources consulting, numerous projects. Loved that part of the journey on so many levels. But I guess, applying the jungle gym concept, the one element that I really liked about the consulting job was the diversity of it. I mean, I could be literally working in the morning on a performance management project with Tesco, and in the afternoon, I could be working on a reward project with Ukrainian railways, as an example. And so, that learning was massive. I mean, every client, every interaction, every project meant, huge amount of learning. And then, so that was for about 5 years. And then a classical consultant story happened to me. one of my key clients, which was a major bank major banking group in Central Europe, and they were one of my top 3 clients. The CEO and I had a really good rapport on the projects that we're working on. And one of these days, I remember vividly, he came to me and said, "Look, I'm paying you way too much money as a consultant. Why don't you come on the other side and actually taste the flavor of implementation?" Right? That's one caveat about consulting work, that very randomly you get to do the implementation, mainly because that would be expensive, and then companies say, we're going to do the implementation ourselves. And so after a little bit of dancing around, if you will, I wasn't sure, and et cetera, I said, let's do it. And he was right. I mean, he was totally right. Being a consultant and advisor on certain levels, and then jumping on the other side of the wall, so to speak, and being thrown into an implementation where you actually have to do internal selling, right? You need to go to your peers and say, "Hey, these are the projects. This is what we do." Was a huge learning curve. And so I was for 5 years. I was a CHRO in the bank, in charge of implementation of all kinds of stuff. Employer value proposition project, that was fascinating. We did some huge project on. We flipped around the concept of how personal budgets are allocated to business managers. So all kinds of things happen. And then after about 5 years, I was actually by the same CEO who was now moved to a different country within the same banking group. And he called me up and said, "Look, I have a project that I think that your strengths might be really working on this project." And it was an M&A work, mergers and acquisitions. And so for 3 years, I worked on a huge M&A project within the same banking group, but in a different country. We moved to Czech Republic. I knew that was time bound, time limited, but again, massive learning curve. That was the jungle gym again. I was suddenly I was in a project that was very tech oriented. My bank actually purchased a retail portfolio of Citibank in Czech Republic. And so there was a lot of things around client migration from one bank to the other, their credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. Huge learning. That was my entry into the tech world. And what was really interesting part of that learning was I realized some of the things that I was doing as an HR director, now that I was on the quote unquote other side of the barricade, I realized, oh my gosh, I should have done this differently. And so, that was, just a proof of concept that jungle gym approach going, right? I had many aha moments. In any case, I knew that was kind of a time bound, that particular engagement, because the project had a beginning and the end. And make the long story short, I got hunted while I was in Prague by a consumer finance company, a large one at that point of time. And I became a COO in Home Credit, which is a consumer finance company in Vietnam. And we moved to Saigon. My wife, so I'm originally from Slovakia. My wife is American.
Nice.
I remember vividly, we lived in Prague at that point of time. And I remember vividly, I came home and I said, "Hey, honey, how about moving to Saigon?" And she looked at me and she goes, "Well, you know what? No, actually, no. My wife, Emily, is more of a how should I put this? Adventure seeker than I am on some levels.
Happy days.
So she looked at me and she goes, "Well, in Prague, I am half globe away from home, one direction over the Atlantic. From Saigon, I'll be half a globe away from home, the other direction, Pacific. So I don't care." And so we went.
Happy days.
Yeah, we went, and we lived in Saigon for 6 years. I worked for 3 years for a consumer finance company, and then for the next 3 years for a Taiwanese life insurance company. What was important in terms of my career on that six year journey, besides massive learning on cultural differences, right? I mean, Southeast Asia is just a whole different ball game, from how my kids were doing in the school all the way to how business is conducted. I mean, that would be for separate podcast or video cast. But anyway, but also professionally, I was thrown actually with the consumer finance company. I was thrown at a huge digital project, and so my tech background or the initial of it that I gained in Prague became very handy, and I was put in charge of voice code implementation, for example, which now with the AI that whole technology has evolved dramatically. We went completely paperless, so a huge project of how do we create the back office that would go paperless in terms of the contract processing and all of that. And then what was interesting, once I switched the jobs and I worked for the life insurance company, I was again put in charge of, I was the COO and the head of digital transformation. But this time the projects that I was in charge of were much more from the customer side. So the
Wow.
biggest there was creating and implementing a life insurance customer portal so they could log in, etc. And so yeah, this is, and then then towards the end of my tenure there, I got offered a job to be a CEO of a small boutique manufacturing company here in the US. And so after some consideration, etc., and also my wife's been gone from home for 20 plus years. So she put it really nicely. She said, you know what, stars are aligning and I should go home and be with my, aging parents for a while. So let's do it. And so we went and I had the job for about 15 months. But what happened, throughout these last 5 years or so, I had some side projects, if you will, and one of those side projects was what is today Talent Square. And that side project kind of grew into something that's today Talent Square, and that's my primary focus. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a startup founder at 51, which again, just that whole element, being 51 and a startup founder with 3 kids, could be for a separate podcast. But that's where I am right now. I think we'll talk a bit more about Talent Square in a minute there.
Yeah, well, you can see why you say your career is like a jungle gym. Now it all makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. It's just crazy
Absolutely.
how each thing it's all worked out for you, right? Each career move, each business, each role in different types of companies and countries and everything. It's got to where you are today. And if you didn't have certain experiences in companies, you might not have got to a stage where you started this entrepreneurial startup company as well.
No, absolutely. The interesting part of about this whole jungle gym concept is the fact that you go through, and whether it's professionally or life-wise, I mean, I can even say that my life has been kind of a jungle gym because of the places that we lived and what we were exposed to. The interesting element about that concept, if you will, is well, one, your career journey becomes like a journey where you collect experiences, right? And those experiences are very different based on the company that you work for, based on your position in the company, the projects, et cetera, et cetera. The big part about it is how do you make sense of it? So how do you connect the dots? I'm gonna quote, or paraphrase Steve Jobs. It's you get these collection of experiences, but they need to make sense together, right? And that's where my alone time thinking, when I walk with my dog, that's my most precious thinking time. That's where I try to connect the dots, and try to make the understanding of it, going back to my notion of, in order for me to understand how organizations work, especially when they're larger and they behave like a living, living mechanisms, if you will, you need to make sure you need to connect the dots. You need to understand how those individual experiences, get you into the experience. The other observation that I've had, which is kind of an interesting one, and I'm gonna wear my heart on my sleeve here for a second, you become isolated a little bit because suddenly you have these experiences that a lot of people don't have, and that's not a judgment call. That's more just a realization. I mean, we as a family purposefully went on this journey, and part of the journey was my professional experiences. You become isolated because when you start talking about your professional experiences, a lot of people can't relate because they don't have the same experience. So you have the tendency then to kind of quote unquote, search for friends that have the same experience or similar one. And that has been kind of an interesting learning for me as well, is the fact that I have collected these different experiences and been all over the world, living and existing, just kind of makes me isolated as well to a certain extent.
Yeah, completely. And over that time, of course, there's a lot of challenges you would have come across alongside a lot of learning curves, right? What do you say the biggest challenges are that you came across throughout your journey as well? If you used to say your top 2 biggest challenges that, for example, anyone listening today that's going through the career at the moment, that wants to grow and do well, what would be your advice for anyone from challenges that you've had, and what would be advice for someone to not go through the same as what you did as well?
That's a great question, Luca.
Mm.
Um, I think that the biggest element for me and the learning on my personal journey, like who I am and
Yeah.
and what do I stand for.
Mm.
Every time that I made this, crazy jungle gym move, so I went from HR field to a tech field, or I went from Central Europe, that's a cultural environment that I've known because I grew up there, to Southeast Asia.
Mm.
When you make that move, you had to put your ego aside.
Mm.
And to
I
elaborate
agree.
on that a little bit, I remember when I got hired by the consulting company early on in my career, and I thought I was a hot shot. I thought I was a hot shot. I just got my PhD. I've done all this research throughout my studies. I've studied in the US, I've studied in Netherlands, yada yada yada. I thought I was a hot shot. My boss, who hired me for the consulting company, day two, that I was on the job, set me down and she said, it was a her. She was fantastic. She said, everything and everybody's life will be much easier if we agree that you know nothing and you start from point zero. And at that particular moment, that was a slap in the face. Like,
Running point.
what do you mean I know nothing,
Yeah.
right? Um, as we went on and we built a great relationship, and that part of my journey was hugely influential, not only in terms of my professional development, but also who I am as an individual. I understood why she said that. But in order for me to be able to process that, I had to put my ego aside. And it took, it wasn't overnight, right? Similar thing happened when I switched from the CHR role to being the program manager for the merger and acquisition project. Again, I thought, I knew some things, yada, yada, yada. I was part of that banking group for quite some time, so I thought I knew the organizational context. The first week, I mean, I was put on the team where I was working on the project with a senior IT project manager, because there was a lot of IT stuff on that project. And week in, we got into quarrels because I was more focused on how do we run this project from the project perspective. He was more focused on the IT aspects and these other things. And he told me, hey, you know nothing. You don't know this. You don't know this. And again, I had to put the ego away, kind of start to listen to him more, even though I was technically his boss, and kind of start learning. We became great friends. We actually then worked on some projects together in Southeast Asia. That was a coincidence. But anyway, so similar thing happened when we moved to Vietnam. By this point of time, I was, more techie, if you will. I
Mm.
got to a company that was very techie and still is. And, my ego was bigger because of my tech experience. And I got slapped in the face by my boss back then and in Vietnam, and said, hey, look, this is a different company. You quote unquote, you know nothing. So to those kind of illustrations, I think the biggest one is, if you want to have a jungle gym career, which I think has great pros, it has great
Mm.
advantages, great added values as you go through it. This would be the thing that I would say. You need to be able and ready to put your ego aside and admit every time you make that change. Admit, I know nothing about this, and I'm gonna, spend whatever time you have, learn, and to get to the point where you can say, hey, now I know.
Mm. I completely agree. Like you couldn't have said that any better because the people that put ego aside are the ones that learn and develop a lot more compared to the ones that that have a big ego and stick that way. You're going to be fairly capped at where you can go in your career as well. Don't get me wrong, you can do well, but there's a limit, and you're not going to learn as much as you could do if you was going to put it aside and actually listen to others.
And Luca, don't get me wrong. In terms of, now it sounds easy, right?
Mm.
Oh, you decide
Yeah,
to put your ego aside. I have an ego size of
yeah,
the bus, and people that know
yeah,
me know I have an ego size of the bus. So
yeah,
every time I had to do that, and especially the first time, it was a huge
yeah,
learning for me. I can talk about it now as a learning because I have done some tremendous amount of digesting what the heck is going
yeah.
on, right? And so the next time I was put in that situation, my ego was still sized to the bus, but I kind of knew, that something was going to happen with this putting ego on the side. So
Mm.
as you progress, but those are hard moments when,
Mm.
you think you know stuff, or you think that you are good at something, and then you need to go and do a self-reflection and say, you know what? Everybody's life and my
Yeah,
progress will be faster and easier if I just put that aside. So it wasn't easy. Now it sounds easy because I
yeah,
can reflect on it. But when I
yeah.
was in the situation, that wasn't easy.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably easy now because you've probably done it 100 times throughout your career with all those challenges
Several.
you had
Yeah,
going on.
several.
Interesting. And then going from, working for someone else to actually, starting off on your own business. I mean, that's not easy, right? And adapting to that. How did you find the transition going from working with someone to, starting up by yourself?
It's one of the hardest things that I have done professionally. It's one of the hardest
Really?
things that I've done. Hardest in terms of, and don't get me wrong, I probably wouldn't change it for anything,
Mm,
because the learning, if I compare the learning that I have kind of absorbed or done while I was in corporate world, and like you put it very eloquently, working for somebody else, that was huge. But when you start working on your own, and you know what they say, very often at the top you are alone. Yeah, the last 2 years since we started to do this global platform and automating something that we had done before manually, one of the hardest journeys. It's the grind, the perseverance, the self-doubt. I think that's one of the biggest elements, especially when you get your first no's, whether it's the no's from someone that you are trying to sell to your solution, or in my case also no's from potential investors. Those are serious,
yeah.
negative ego trips. And when they accumulate, it's no after no after no. You have a lot of self-doubt. And how do you get through that self-doubt? So it's been, and the other aspect of it is you are literally wearing 16, 18, 20 hats, and you can have them on, in one day you can use eight of them, because you have a topic A that's
Mm,
legal, and a topic B that's product, and topic C, the next sales meeting, and topic D, the next VC a call for potential investments. So it's been very, very, it's hard. It's hard.
yeah.
It's hard. I wouldn't change it for anything. And even if this
Mm,
fails, even if it doesn't take off, or we are not able to raise more money, and yet we don't have enough revenue down the road,
mm,
I still wouldn't change it for anything, because that concept of jungle gym career stays with me, and this is a huge
yeah.
part of my jungle gym now.
Yeah. 100% for sure. It's just, keeping that positive mindset, you're obviously going to keep staying positive and getting to where you want to be as well. Because it's just that growth stage. Obviously, being a startup, you're not going to wake up one year and then, down the line, yeah, you're not going to wake up a year later and have a successful business. Successful businesses don't come easy. So, okay, it is a graft, of course, and, it's at that stage, but, you're obviously going in the right direction. And if you wasn't, you'd give up, but you got that right mindset for sure.
Yes, and there have been moments where I wouldn't say I was on the verge of giving up, but there were
Mm.
moments, when that self-doubt creeps in, where
Right.
you question. Yeah,
Yeah.
you question yourself, you
Yeah.
question those that are working with you, you question your product, you question your solution, you question the
Mm.
market, you just you question. And
Mm.
that, if it's, I think the way to put it is, if you keep on questioning and not finding, at least to some of the questions, answers from
Mm.
within, then you're gonna give
Mm.
up. So,
Yeah.
one of the things, if I, again, connecting the dots, right? If I connect the dots, the slaps on my ego that I have, quote unquote, received over my corporate career because of these changes that
Mm.
I have made, I think that they helped me personally to kind of search for the answers within. And for every question or self-doubt question that you have, and you find some sort of answer or explanation, to two more pop up, right? So it's not like, it's a to-do list that has an end, and you just keep on marking it off. In this question,
Yeah.
I have answered myself, da da da. So it's just perpetual journey. That's what it is.
Yeah, completely. And on to your business as well. I mean, I find it so interesting how you started it up and all the ideas, how it's come to one to get to your business where it is today. So anyone listening, they got an understanding. First of all, talk about, summarize your business, how it all works, how you operate. And the second of all, how did you think to start a business like the business you're operating today?
Mm. Our Talent Square is a platform through which anybody can launch a social media campaign for job vacancies or employer brands. That's my elevator one sentence explanation. Maybe to elaborate on that, quite often we kind of compare our solution to what Shopify has done for e-commerce, right? Shopify has popularized and created an enablement platform for anyone to create a simple e-shop, right? It used to be a domain for coders and programmers, and if I wanted to sell whatever goods that I wanted to sell on an e-shop, I had to, you know, hire an IT team that would develop and code the e-shop, et cetera, et cetera. What Shopify, and there are other players, but I use Shopify because I feel that's kind of the biggest player in the space. What Shopify has done with the automation platform is literally a couple summers ago, I sat down, I have an artist friend, and he asked me, hey, can you help me? You know, he knows nothing about IT and coding and programming. And he goes, well, I would like to sell the prints of my art online. Can you help me set up a simple e-shop? And I said, well, you know what, we can try. And we sat down, we created a Shopify account. And sure enough, 2 days later, without any experience before, we were able to launch a very simple one, but a e-shop for him. That's kind of what we are trying to do with our platform for those that are predominantly in recruitment space and that are, you know, now utilizing other channels than the classic legacy ones that would be job boards, in order to, you know, to gain more or to attract more candidates and to communicate their company's employer brand. What we have found out, and so that platform now is live. Obviously, we have users that using it, and we continuously collect feedback from our customers. But literally, my 78-year-old mom, who is kind of my one biggest fan, but also the biggest tester. When we put in a new feature, I have her sit down and use it, and I ask her, "Does this make sense? Can you do it without 2 questions or 3 questions?" And when she does ask questions, then I'll write it down so we can include it into FAQ section of the platform. But she can now, if she has the job description and she has some visuals, she can now launch a social media campaign. So we automate and make launching social media campaigns for job vacancies and employer brands as easy as possible.
Wow. Interesting. And I know you said about, you know, it helps with recruitment firms. Can it help any company essentially that wants to, you know, build out their business,
Yeah,
for
that's a
example?
good question. That's a really good question. I actually had a conversation with a potential client yesterday, and he was asking me the same thing because he's got other businesses than just recruitment. He was asking me if, you know, oh, that's interesting. So you automate social media campaigns. Can I do it from my real estate business? The answer is no. And the main reason why that answer is no is because the secret sauce for any social media campaign is your targeting. So what is it that you need to do on the backend side of things in terms of the setup of the campaign in order for the money that you put towards it then to be used effectively, right? So in other words, you know, in our case, ideal scenario is we have a customer who decides, you know, they need to recruit for a particular position. They create a campaign on our platform and launch it. Let's just say they put $200 into that campaign, right? That's the money that's being paid to whatever social media platform they will use. The ideal scenario is that after only $100 is spent out of the $200 for 4 weeks period, so after 102 weeks, they come back to us and say, we are stopping the campaign because we have what we need. But in order to, yeah, right, so I have enough candidates, not only that I have enough candidates, but I can see those candidates that they will be fitting and I will be able to choose one from that particular group. I'm stopping it. In order to get to that point, you need to have your targeting right. The targeting means where are those advertisements being displayed on whose device, right? And that is being decided whose device they appear in your feed by this targeting. So for us, the targeting and the secret sauce, the targeting is focused on the job vacancy and employer branding world. So if somebody is looking for, I don't know, CNC operator, for example, or a truck driver, then when they launch a campaign through our platform, on the backend side of our platform, the targeting is focused on how do we make sure that this advertisement appears on the feeds of those people that either have been truck drivers, can potentially be truck drivers, or have some sort of a relation to at least that business vertical. Excuse me, right? Does that make sense? So, you know, if this
Completely.
this potential client of ours that I talked to yesterday, and when he asked me, hey, can I advertise my real estate business and the properties that I'm trying to sell, I'm going, technically you can. Technically, we would
Mm.
be able to set up the campaign, but you will be wasting money because we don't have the capability to target buyers of new real estate. You know what I mean? Does that make
Makes
sense?
sense. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. But I mean, essentially, for example, if he wanted to recruit someone, for example, I don't know, a property sales individual, on that point of view, it's transferable for every industry essentially, as long
Oh,
as they're
100%.
recruited.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
hundred, yes, 100%.
yeah.
Maybe I will use that word. Our limitation at the moment, and we keep on building. Our limitation at the moment is that we have automated and integrated into our platform Meta. So
Mhm.
currently, when a customer launches a campaign through our platform, that campaign is on Instagram and Facebook only. One of the reasons why we are currently with our clients focusing on business verticals that are more in the area of quote unquote having what we call
Yeah.
internally Facebook jobs. So we're focusing on logistics, we're focusing on manufacturing, we're focusing on, especially here in the US, on simple healthcare jobs. There's a huge gap and a huge lack
Mm.
of people in healthcare, especially post-COVID in the United States, because all of those jobs, or people that would either apply for those jobs or are already in those jobs, those are people that are not on LinkedIn.
Mm.
Those are, and I mean, I am generalizing a little bit, but those are what we call Facebook jobs. We are right now looking at
Yeah.
the next integration, because obviously the vision is much greater. The vision is that one day we'll have the 5, 6 key social media platforms
Mm.
integrated. And when you go through the setup of the campaign, at certain point, we will, based on the job description that you upload into our platform, and that's the kind of a stepping stone to create the campaign. Based on that
Mm.
data that you upload into our platform, our system will tell you a proposal and will say, hey, for this business vertical and this position in that business vertical, we recommend a campaign spent, for example, $400. And we
Mm.
recommend $400 because of the job that you are trying to search for. We recommend that $400 to be spent 50% Facebook, 20% Reddit, 30%
Mm.
LinkedIn, as an example. And so that's our roadmap in terms of development. That's a huge part of it. How do we keep on
Mm.
adding next platforms? We are starting right now integrating the next platform. You want to take a wild guess what
Mm.
our customers tell us what they want as the next platform?
What are we talking months? Are we talking years? Are we talking
No. I mean, we are utilizing our customers heavily, quote
mm.
unquote, especially those that have been with us for a longer time, because we used to do this kind of work manually. And about a year and a
Mm.
half, we realized, hey, we're going to put some money together, and we need to automate it, because that's the direction where
Mm.
this whole space is going. AI, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have some what we call friends and family group of our customers. And so when we have some
Mm.
new features that we want to put in, we go ask them as well for their opinion, right? What would be the feature that you would need to have the greatest impact on your work, which has proved to be
Actually,
a really, really good approach, because very often, we kind of have
smart.
some
Very
assumptions as
smart.
a team, and we go, oh, maybe this feature. And then we go back to them and say, no, that doesn't matter. We want this. And so
Yeah.
one of the questions that we asked them recently, some of our customers, is, hey, Meta is integrated. We had our reasons why we started with Meta.
Mm.
Um, what would be the next platform that you want? And so
Oh.
we collected a small sample, right? So you have Reddit, you have LinkedIn, you have TikTok. You could do Snapchat, et cetera, et cetera. You want to
Mm.
take a wild guess what 90% of them told us that they want as the next one?
Instagram.
Instagram we already have, because that's part of
Oh,
Meta.
you already got it.
Yeah, yeah.
What haven't you got? I'm pretty sure you've got. I mean, all the ones you've got
No,
Instagram,
at the moment, we only have integrated Facebook and Instagram. Now we are starting the third integration, and I'm not, I'm gonna
LinkedIn.
ruin. No, TikTok. Now
Oh yeah,
it's
should have
I am
known that
happy
already.
that you say LinkedIn, because when we had the first, kind of a first discussion internally, we are a small team of 5.
Mm.
At the first discussion internally, we thought that LinkedIn was a natural choice, and we went. So
Yeah.
we were almost convinced. We almost thought, hey, on this one, we don't need to go see our customers, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
We don't need to ask them, but we did. We did,
Mm.
and it's TikTok. TikTok, I will quote one head of HR of a large Central European banking group, very conservative business. And we went to him and we were like, hey, what is it that you think? And he goes, you know what? It has to be TikTok because our corporate marketing strategy for the next 2 years is utilizing and leveraging the traffic that we get on TikTok. So I, as an HR director, need to get on that channel as well with my employer branding and with my
Wow.
search. There's data that shows that the population on TikTok is aging. In other words, it's not a platform anymore that's visited by 13-year-olds because those
Yeah,
that
yeah,
were
yeah.
5 years ago now are
Yeah.
entering the labor force. I actually
Mm.
am talking with some people who are doing campaigns on TikTok. They're doing it manually here in the US, and they all pretty much say it brings great results. But you
Mm.
need to know what you're doing also in terms of the visuals, because TikTok is specific in terms of, how does the visual advertisement look like. But
Mm.
yeah, the next one is TikTok. So yeah, we
Yeah.
are on the journey.
You can see why, though. I mean, the way TikTok has grown in the past few years, pretty much everyone uses it these days. I'll be on a train on the way to London, the city, and every single person is just glued to their phone. They're swiping down, swiping down, swiping down. But it's almost like it's a new norm. I mean, I don't like it, the fact that it's normal these days, but it is. And it's the way the world and generation has moved as well,
Yeah. Yes.
for
Yes.
sure.
Yes. One of the, and I don't want to get too technical, because that's a separate podcast or separate video cast, but yes, it's very interesting. It's how we consume the
Mm.
media. TikTok situation in the US is a little bit, it's a little bit kind of funky at the moment,
Mhm.
adapt, but there's talks that,
Mm.
some large US entrepreneur, will either buy part of it or it, and then it will become more prevalent, etc. Because the sentiment towards TikTok in the US at the moment is not the greatest. But again,
Yeah.
while we are focusing at the moment for you on US market, and there are different reasons why, I am not getting away from potential opportunities elsewhere because the platform is global. I mean, I can literally be sitting here in the US, and if I am looking for remote workers in Philippines, as an example, I can launch a campaign in Philippines and collect potential candidates and then screen them through some automated solution, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a global platform.
Smart idea, very smart idea. And in terms of your business as well, I mean, how does it use AI for the business as well? And how do you see it impacting the market?
Oh boy. How do we do? So at the moment, there are three things that are happening on our side with AI. I mean, obviously, we have integrated LLMs, large language models, into our solution. So, for example, if you upload the job description into the platform based on which then the campaign is kind of prepared and designed semi-automatically for you, you have the ability to have the job description, improved, make it more attractive by, clicking the button, and then AI will look at it. And we have some proprietary prompts behind it, because one of the things where we need to be careful, we cannot let AI to change the nature of the description, because the description is one of the data sets that goes into targeting. And if AI would change the job description, our targeting would not work. We are so that's one element that's already in there. The second element that we already have in there, and now we are actually adding a couple layers to it, is a solution where we are starting to train our own AI agentic engine. And the main reason why is because, like I said, the secret sauce behind it and what gives us competitive advantage is, what do we know about targeting? Because the ultimate goal is not the customer, not our user, to spend $200 on the campaign and get 20 candidates in 4 weeks. The ultimate goal is to perfect the targeting to such an extent that for $50, he or she will get 100 candidates in 1 week. That's the vision, right? And so what we are now starting to do, we are feeding all the data from every campaign that we have done to our own AI,
Gotcha.
engine server, if you will, and having it learn and find patterns behind, who is clicking on that advertisement, what's their profiles, how do we need to improve our targeting. So that's the second one. And we should have that, I mean, yeah, that's a journey. You start and you just keep on feeding, right?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I am right now in the US heavily looking for early adopters of the solution, even though I'm not so much, I mean, I am concerned about revenue, but it is more important for me to get campaigns going, even if I give them to my customers on a freemium plan. In other words, that I waive some of the fees and they only spend money on the social media spend. One of the reasons why is because more campaigns I run, more data I have, more my AI agentic agent can learn and can improve the targeting and the whole efficiency of the system. So that's the second one. And then the third one, we are actually right now testing. So because of our focus on these sectors that are, how should I put this politely, on these manufacturing, logistics, simple healthcare jobs, those are all sectors where let's just say the level of technological advancement in the HR field is a little bit less than, let's say, if you are a software development house, right? Because you are in a different kind of business. And what we also very often see with these sectors is they don't necessarily have marketing departments, or if they do, the marketing departments in those kind of businesses don't really work with HR. And so one of the feedbacks that we have received from some of the clients when we tell them, hey, 90% of the success of your campaign is the visual, they go, well, we don't have a visual. Or I would have to create one, and I don't know how because I'm HR, yada yada yada. So the third thing that we are starting to work on is integrating a top-notch visual creator. We are looking at Nano Banana Pro, which is the latest Google product. We are looking at some other, we've looked at Grok, and so we're also looking at them from the integration easiness perspective, if you will. But again, the ultimate vision is, once a user uploads a job description into our platform, then our automated engine will provide a first draft of the campaign on the verbal part, what should be the text in the campaign. Then the next step will be that, based on as simple as uploading your business website and through some drop-down menus, providing some options how they can prompt the AI visual creator, they will prompt it, and the AI visual creator will create the ad, will create the visual of the ad. I have been playing with Nano Banana Pro over the last month or so. I don't know if you have done any testing. Literally, I typed in, I need a advertisement for a job vacancy with insurance company XYZ in this market. Here's the link to the website. I need to have some people in it. I want you to use the colors, the branding colors that they have on the website. Please create me a visual. 30 seconds later, you have absolutely mind-boggling visual.
Crazy.
So that's kind of the third layer. Of course, Jungle Gym journey, right? Learning. We are on a learning journey. My tech lead, Joseph, is absolutely amazing. And I mean, the other thing is this, and I'm gonna reveal it. I'm not gonna hide it, even though I think that the investors will go, my tech lead right now manages four coders. 4. 3 of those are AI agents. They're robots. 80% of our coding is now automated. The last mile, the last 20%, where you gotta check it, you gotta do the details, the specifics of your solution, et cetera. That's where human, him and one other person comes in. But the initial coding, 80%, I was on a call with him a couple of days ago, and he was like, Brano, it's crazy. I am managing 3 robots. I'm getting overwhelmed.
That's
So
crazy.
so that's besides the client or the user element of AI use. This is a huge layer that we're doing. And yeah, he's onto it. We know that we need to. My ambition is to build a company that will make 10 million ARR annual revenue with 5 people, not with 50. You know what I mean? That's kind of and I mean, with what I'm seeing and the rabbit holes that I've been down to in the last 14 months in terms of automation and AI and what's possible and what's capable and yada yada yada. I mean, that's the direction. And is it scary to a certain extent? Yes, it is. Is it fascinating to a great extent as well? Yes, it is. I'm in a 50-50 game. I'm scared for what the future of my kids will be in terms of their work and what's the career for them. But at the same time, I'm old enough where I remember telephones when I was growing up at my mom's or at my parents' house that I had to dial this way, right? So I'm kind of I feel privileged to be old
Yeah.
or to be older, to kind of remember the times, and then to be able to appreciate the progress that we have done. So
Yeah.
50-50, scary and fascinating at the same time.
100%. I mean, kids these days don't realize that, when we was younger, I mean, you'd have to knock on someone's door to go out and play with your friends. You can't just call them up on your phone or send them a Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram. These days, it's a complete different generation. I mean, again, that's the way technology's moved, right?
Yeah. Look, a funny story.
Mm.
So I am recently I went back here in Grand Rapids in Michigan to teaching. I picked up a couple of courses at the university. I was missing that experience to a little bit, and opportunity came. So I said, yes, I can teach a couple
Yeah.
of courses. So I teach a couple of courses at the marketing department
Mm.
of the business school here. And the marketing department actually has what they call an advisory board. Advisory board
Mm.
is a compilation of 10 individuals that are business leaders from the community that are ex-graduates of the school. And so we invite them
Gotcha.
into our market. Yeah, we invite them into our marketing meeting twice a year, the Department of Marketing meeting twice a year. And we kind of have a reality check with them. What's going on in your business? What are the things that you're seeing? All with the intention of us finding out whether we need to adjust our curriculum because they have, they have expectations in terms of the labor force they're coming into the labor market. What are the things that they see that they're missing that they need in their businesses that people need to have? What's superbly interesting, the last one, that was my first one that I was into. We have the next one in a week or so. So I was there listening to them in the first one, and you know what they said? What are the three skills that they feel that we need to pay more attention to because kids, young adults that are coming out of school and entering the labor market are completely missing? One, communication skills. In other words, what they were saying
Yeah.
is young people today communicate through texting, through voice messaging, voice recordings, da da da. When they are facing a situation, initial one that you're gonna meet a partner, you're gonna meet a potential client, and you need to have a face-to-face conversation. They go deer in the headlights, and that they try to replace that conversation with emailing or with even a telephone call is a complication. So communication, number one. Number two, which was even more shocking to me, is they said, and I quote, basic human interaction skills. For example, how do you do a handshake properly? Or how do you keep an eye contact when
That's
you are in
silly.
face to no? And this is
Crazy.
10 respected business leaders from the community,
Crazy.
50 plus that have been in the business
Yeah.
for 20 years. So that was number two. And then number three was resilience. Don't falter, don't fall apart when you receive a first no or when you do a first failure, right? And I will quote one of the advisory board member. Kids today seem to be a lot more entitled than we were, and
Yeah.
I can only I can only make a judgment on it. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm trying to raise my kids that don't feel entitled, but I can see that. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting interesting thing that's happening while this technological sprint in terms of
Mm.
progress is in place. It is obvious that the human skills, obvious, I can judge by this input that the human skills are needed and actually lacking. And again, we need to find the
Mm.
balance. Find the balance.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. And I've heard multiple people say that as well, compared to how it used to be 10 years ago when there wasn't the social media, the phones, the constant thing where instead of meeting someone, you FaceTime them. It's a complete different world. So I can see exactly why it's gone down that way. And I mean, any, individuals that go into work these days for, they need more younger generation, anyone listening. I mean, what would be your advice starting off in their career to try and give them a step ahead of others in the market?
Jungle gym.
Yeah, just chuck yourself at it.
And I mean, yeah, I have some conversations with my students about this.
Hmm.
Where are you heading? What is it that you want to do? And they're juniors and seniors, so third year, fourth year, so they are a little advanced. They are towards the graduation, and again, their preconceptions in terms of what will be the first job and this quote unquote high end career. And I'm going, go and work 6 months in McDonald's. Go get that experience, because that will teach you so many things. It will teach you humbleness and appreciation for manual labor. It will also teach you, McDonald's is one of the companies that has process management and end-to-end processes to perfection. You will need that anywhere else you go. And yes, I can understand that there's a quote unquote a little bit of a stigma. I'm a college graduate. I can't, I'm not going to go work at McDonald's. And I'm going, no, you actually should and need to. I'm not saying that's going to be life career, but in terms of the learnings, jungle gym, it's a huge, huge experience that you can get. And then, when they ask, then jump to something else. You have this, so you graduate at 22, you have this 3, 4 years, especially if you don't have the family yet, right? And so you are being kind of quote unquote equipped in terms of flexibility, in terms of more time, et cetera, et cetera. Go spend 3 years collecting experiences before you start going into a particular journey or a particular pattern. And so some of them look at me like I'm from a different planet, because there are preconceptions about working for McDonald's, et cetera, et cetera. But that would be my advice. And again, I can provide advice from my experience. I understand that there are many people who are looking at their career from a different perspective, which I would call a ladder career. In other words, I want to become a super expert in one field, and then I will just go straight up, learn next position in that area, learn next. You need to find what you want. And again, those 3 years or 2 years, whatever, spend some time collecting experiences. Those 3 years could be, in my book, could be a great time to figure out what you want, figure out where your heart is. And in my case, my heart was, I want to continue collecting those experiences and then making sense of them in terms of becoming a quote unquote general manager, a CEO one day. But that would be my advice.
Yeah, you could honestly couldn't have said that better. I completely agree with that as well. People again, it's the ego thing. People think they're too good for the job. Essentially, that's where you're starting. It's not like you're going to be working there for the rest of your life. It's a learning curve. You learn a lot of experience from that. The speaking to people, the sociable, the meetings, the process, like you say, the process management, sticking to the guidelines. There's so much involved with that. Where they're so regulated in that sense, and they need to tick every single box to make sure everything's perfect for the customers.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from that as well. And for sure,
And,
I completely agree with that.
this whole topic, and I mean, again, that's for a separate
No.
podcast. This whole topic opens up a Pandora's box in terms of where is our globally, and then in patches, different parts of the world, where's the education going? Two comments. One, in my school, in the university that I'm a part of, there's a huge debate on what the heck do we do with the AI. I mean, my initial orientation, we had like a new faculty orientation. So, when I started in September, we had a 3-day kind of an onboarding course. Day and a half of the 3 day was spent on what is it that we will do or can do or cannot do, allowed to do with the AI. For example, there were teachers that were coming into school teaching creative writing. And, they said, we don't know if our job in 3 years will be necessary. So there's a huge debate in relation to AI on the academic field. Part of the problem, in my mind, with that is academia is traditionally kind of slow in decision making. Everything needs to be discussed. There's committees, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but the AI train is just it's just going,
flying.
right? It's marching
Yeah.
on. So I think that not only that academia needs to kind of figure out what do we do about this, how much of it we allow, how much we don't allow, but also speed up. The second thing that this debate opens about the academia in general is the fact that oh, now it slipped my mind. One was how do we use the AI, and the second one was especially when I compare Europe and US. In Europe, the educational system is set up in such a way that kids need to make decisions on their specialization as early as 14, or maybe sometimes even earlier, right? It's the vocational schools or yada, yada, yada. I'm not so sure that's the right way to go in this day and age. And that's why I have a little bit more appreciation, might be strong word, but in the US, the education all the way until you graduate from high school, which would be secondary school in Britain, It's general. There is no vocational schools. You don't have to make a decision. You don't have to go through, entrance exams when you are going from elementary to secondary, et cetera, et cetera. It's all smooth. They will leave that decision for you for later in life. Actually, you can enter university and start general and then choose your major, after first year, or change your major second year, et cetera, et cetera. Which I think that in terms of this, at least in my book, the jungle gym concept, that's just a much better way to go. When we force 14-year-old kids to make a decision, I want to be an engineer, and so when I'm 15, I need to start studying engineering. Usually those choices are made by the parents. They're not made by the kids, right? And then, there's a lot of unhappiness later on, because you
Yeah.
go, you graduate, and you go try it out, and you go, this is not for me, and I just wasted 4 years of my time,
Yeah.
going for engineering, but because somebody else made that choice for me. So, that's like I said, that's another Pandora's box. I think
Yeah.
that education, generally speaking, worldwide, will have to go through some major, major transformation if it's not already going through. So
Mm.
my 2 cents. Sorry for a rant about that one.
No, I completely agree. Completely agree, Brano. And it was an absolute pleasure having you today. I mean, we're going to need to do another podcast as well because we've got a lot to talk about. But look, absolute pleasure. I think it's very helpful for anyone listening and anyone that first of all wants to get a business, and second of all getting into their career, right, and just chucking yourself at it. Any experience is a good experience, and it's going to help lead to where you want to get to, right? And it's just taking it one step at a time.
Luca, it has been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the talk. And yes, as you said, if I'm given the platform, because of my jungle gym, I think that we can talk for hours. So maybe
Yeah,
we'll do
for sure.
one next time. Thanks to all of the listeners. My 2 cents. This is my sharings of the experiences, and all the best in your endeavors.
No, definitely. And then also anyone listening, any companies that want to recruit and they want to save paying a recruitment fee, reach out to Brano Talent Square.
Oh,
Can
indeed, indeed.
save you a lot of money.
Thank you. Thank you, Luca.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Cheers, Brano. Cheers.